Good morning. We're so excited to have you with us today for Max Minutes. We are thrilled to have the folks from the Georgia Center for Opportunity with us today to talk about their organization as well as the benefits cliff. And if you don't know what the benefits cliff is, they're going to explain it to you today. So let's get started. So we want to give a special thank you to our anchors who've invested in Max Minutes and enable us to bring this partnership together so we can all be aware of what's going on in the Atlanta metro region. Coming up with Max, just want to point out a few things for you. The next Max Talks Lunch and Learn with McKinney's is on skilled trades. It's in person and it's Wednesday, June 22nd at 11:30. The next Max Minutes is with the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice on Friday, June 24th. And the next Max Academy is on trauma-informed customer care. It's in person on June 28th. If you're interested in those, you'll be receiving some emails, I'm sure, but if you're interested, please get in touch with Joy Wilkins at the email that you had seen along with this registration. So I'm Lee Hunter. I'm thrilled to be here today moderating this meeting. I'm the regional coordinator with the Georgia Department of Labor for Region 3 South, which is Central Atlanta, Metro Atlanta. And we're very excited today, thrilled to talk to Eric Cockling, Buzz Broadway, and Eric Randolph. And they are with the Georgia Center for Opportunity. Eric is the Chief Program Officer and General Counsel. Buzz, you see, is the Executive Vice President of Public Policy. And Eric serves as the Director of Research. So if we want to get started, Eric, would you like to kind of kick us off and give an intro of everybody and get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Leah. I appreciate that. I'm hearing feedback. Are you hearing that?
I'm hearing that as well.
Okay. Well, maybe it will. It sounds like it's probably.
That sounds better.
Good. Okay. All right. So first, thank you to Lee and Joy for helping coordinate this. And also, I know Daniela Perry was instrumental in getting us invited to speak. And I know she's on maternity leave, but thankful to her as well. So I appreciate the introduction. So I won't go through those again. I'll just briefly say that Georgia Center for Opportunity, broadly, I won't go into too much of this, but our work is around the success sequence, this idea that if you can graduate from high school, get a steady job, and then have children after you're married, that the odds of being in poverty are very low, something like 2% over the course of your life. And if you get that sequence out of order, it's much higher, something like 75% over the course of your life. And so our interest in the benefits cliff and its effect on people stems from our interest in trying to cure poverty in the ways that we can. So that's how we got into this work. It was really due to an interest in poverty and hearing about the effects of the welfare cliff on people trying to advance in the workplace, and finding at times they would receive raises that effectively would make them lose more in benefits than they would receive in the raise, if you calculate it over an annual time frame, and sometimes dramatically so. So that's essentially what got us into this. The modeling piece that we will show you shortly stemmed out of wanting to be able to understand that on a more comprehensive level. Mainly what we were working off of before the model were anecdotes. And we had enough discussions, though, with agencies and with business owners who had seen this problem repeatedly that we knew it was more than anecdotal, and we wanted to be able to show that. And so it's been over 6 years ago that we started work on this, and Eric Randolph is the mastermind behind this. He had been working on modeling this for other states, and then sort of by program, this is the most comprehensive version, what you're going to see that he's developed to date, and we're just lucky to have him on our team at GCO. So essentially, I'll get us started as I have. We'll turn to Eric to do a demo of what's actually in the system and how to use it. And then we'll turn to Buzz, who is our VP of Policy, and so he can talk more about how we've used the system to help get the policy reform discussion started, and also just how the use of the system has developed and who we see actually going in and using it. And it's gone beyond the policy world, and that's why we think this is an important presentation to give to you. Let's see. The first thing I want to do, though, is to show you a short video, if I can, because I think it summarizes really well why we got into this. Okay, so I'll share my screen.
Okay.
And Lee, if you can't hear this, please just raise your hand or something so I can see.
Okay. Thank you.
This is a story of Joelle, someone impacted by the welfare cliffs.
I started out a victim of domestic violence. That really just propelled me to need housing. I've never lived in public housing until recently. I've always paid regular rent. And it just was a struggle after leaving. I had never even had to worry about rent being in a two-parent home. But when I was on my own, the rent increase was just astronomical. I was actually offered full-time employment with the state of Georgia, which definitely gave me a raise increase, where I was fortunate enough to actually finally break over the income barrier of just being in poverty and, struggling month to month. With me moving here, I was excited. I was actually grateful. I was excited until, recently when I found out the amount of increase in my rent. I moved my employment, I moved everything out here, and now I'm at risk of losing everything. I got the increase, which I thought it would be a cap on my rent, but it wasn't. I'm actually paying a mortgage rate, which is like almost $1,000 for rent for public housing. It's no real help if you're in my position, to where you're in that need, where you increase over the standard rate for family and you pretty much are stuck in this wealth gap. Housing is too expensive, but you only make a certain amount, so you're never going to reach that limit. You have help, but then if you help yourself, you're faced with adversities that you shouldn't be faced with. You're not able to provide for your family. That's devastating. It's devastating. I suffer from anxiety. It causes stress. It causes severe depression. You don't know the depths of homelessness until you slept in your car, or you don't know the actual effect of sleeping in your car and being faced with those positions. And sometimes lawmakers have never been in those positions, so they make decisions based on what they've experienced. So that's really my hope and dream, to be able to have a voice, to make that change.
All right.
That was outstanding. Thank you so much. Really drives home the challenge, some of the challenges and the issues and the importance of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Joelle's story is kind of tugs at your heart, because it's, she was escaping a domestic violence situation and was doing everything right, that you could do in her position, and still ran up against a cliff. And the good news is that even though she lost the housing benefit that she'd been receiving and went through some tough times, she pushed through. I mean, she had the will, and she had enough community support around her to push through it, and is doing well. But you can imagine, if you didn't have the support or the willpower to push through that situation, how you could be trapped and not be able to better yourself. So anyways, that's why we're in this. We really want to change the system for her. And in the course of that, we want to, as much as we can, allow this model to help nonprofits and others be able to do things they can now immediately to help situations like Joelle. So that's what's motivating this. And I guess as you'll see when Eric does a demo, the cliffs really exist in all of our programs. There are a few, a few that where they don't exist, but in most they do. And it's, contrary to how people may think of it, there's not a single cliff. There are multiple cliffs as you earn additional income. And so it's faced multiple times by people if they persist through, a cliff. And you'll see that. Currently, just a couple more comments and I'll turn it over to Eric, but currently the model covers 9 states. That's what's on the platform. You can go there. It's benefits, cliffs, S after both words, .org. And most of those, well, all those states are in the South. It goes down to the county level. So we have over 1,000 counties that you can, see how these programs play out locally in those counties. And it covers roughly 1/3 of the population in the US at the moment. We have Arkansas on tap to go live here fairly soon. We have all the data in for Arkansas. And then we have 3 additional states in the wings waiting to be added. And that will be Utah, West Virginia, and Kentucky. And our goal is to go to all 50 states and get everyone in here because we think it'll take that sort of grassroots understanding of the problem in order to drive reform. So with that, I'll be quiet and turn it over to Eric, who'll show you more about the model itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to actually share my screen, and it's going to be the same website actually that Eric was sharing. So does everybody see my screen right now? So it says the safety net should be a springboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the same website, excuse me, that Eric was showing you, and here's the film that he actually showed you. If you come here just to demonstrate the model, here are the 9 states that are currently on the system, and so we're in Georgia. So why don't we pick Georgia, and then I guess I have to continue that way. All right, then I just pick a year. Let's pick 2021. By the way, we have the 2022 data, but it's not yet live. And then we have, why don't we pick, how about Gwinnett County? And then what you do here is you just pick your family, give who's in your family. So this prompts you with 1 child. So let's just go with this. This is a 2-year-old boy. And then let's just add a child. Why don't we add, how about an 8-year-old girl to the family? She would be in school. We'll say she's not disabled. And then finally, this would be a single mom. Let's increase her age a little bit. Let's make her, let's say 28. And once we select these, we can actually select to have housing or childcare as part of the calculations, but it's probably better always to include that because you can toggle them off, which I'll show you in a minute. So the next thing we do is we hit generate. So it takes about 30 seconds to generate the results, and then we'll see that in a half a minute here. But just a little bit more about the model, why it's generating it. What you're looking at is a computational model. So what's behind this is there's we took the actual rules taken either from the statute, the regulations, or the guidelines of the various departments, and we converted it into formula that basically generates what the benefits would be. So it calculates, are you eligible based on your earnings or your income, and then it says what are the benefits that you would actually receive, and then it gives us the results. So this is really a computational model. And right now we have someone on our team who retired from the largest state department of human services in the country, and he's an eligibility expert. So we have somebody working on this. We want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. So coming right here, this is the result. So what you're looking at is you're looking at on the x-axis from left to right. This gives us gross annual earnings. And then what you're looking on the vertical axis, this gives you, depending on the color shading, it gives you your gross, not your gross, but your net earnings after taxes. And then it gives you the various kind of categories of benefits. So the very first category would be, for example, the earned income tax credit, the child tax credit, and this would be for the year 2021. This orange here is your TANF program and other cash. This green is your food program. So this includes your food stamps, and it includes your school lunches and your WIC program. And then the red is Medicaid or CHIP. And then this blue here is actually the this is your exchange for the Affordable Care Act. So this would be the individual market exchange. And then the yellow here is your child care subsidy. And then the top gray and this kind of light blue together is Section 8 housing. So that's kind of what we're showing. And of course, what you can see here is you can see that there are various cliffs along the way. So if I kind of put my cursor here, it tells me that's when you have net earnings of 24,000, and you have a very significant cliff here, mostly driven, but you can see it's driven by the food stamp program. And so the other concern that we have several academics doing research. There's a gentleman who runs the Center for the Study of Economic Mobility, and he's written papers on this, and he's actually used our model. He has one model for Forsyth County that he's used, but since we have 9 states, he's actually using our model. And right here, his concern is how flat this is. So just from an economic perspective, anywhere along this plateau, there's very little incentives for someone to actually seek higher earnings. So it's not just, he's pointing out to us, it's just not the cliffs that are the problem. It's the actual slope of where you are. Now, the one thing we can do with this is we can toggle things off, and we could say, for example, what does it look like if we take off the housing, right? So we take off the housing, because a lot of people do not get Section 8 housing. So this would be, for example, how it would look for that. Or we could take off the child care. So, but we can put them back on. So this is the model. I'm going to just stop right here. Does anyone have any questions on what I showed you?
Can I, while you're thinking of questions, couple points. One, the shaded areas are really buckets of types of benefits. Eric mentioned that. The engine that drives this, though, has each one of those programs broken out as a separate thing. So the analysis that's possible with this goes down to the program level. So it's not all in buckets in the engine itself that drives this. I think
we can turn off any particular program. We could say we want to look at everything but food stamps, or we want to look at everything but school lunches. So you can actually, we can isolate, and we could say, hey, we just want to look at with the WIC program, nothing else. So it gives us the ability to isolate and study each individual program. And the reason for that, of course, is that we've gone to each individual program and converted everything, all the rules into the algorithms of, how you would actually display the eligibility and the benefits.
And all told, there are about 16 programs represented in the graph. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, I believe that is the correct number. And it's a little bit shaky because there's a couple programs that overlap, and we actually did it together. So, but I think 16 is the right number that we've actually modeled in this program.
And Eric, it's worth pointing out, we selected those programs because those are the largest ones, and that represents 90% or so of all federal spending on safety net programs. So
That's correct. Yeah.
Lee, are you seeing any questions or receiving any questions?
No, but I had a question, if I may. So clearly, and I'm sorry if I'm derailing, things as we're going, but
Oh, no.
clearly you're using this as a means to show policymakers and those who have the ability to change these models, these policies, which is wonderful. Do you also use this, not necessarily exactly this, but something similar to show people how they can overcome cliffs if they are in need of these services?
That was a perfect segue.
Okay, good.
Into what Buzz will tell you about, but there definitely are other ways that this is being used, and actually we're developing some additional features to help with that. But Buzz, if you want to talk about that.
yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. There's, as obviously the policy implications of this, our ultimate goal is to fix these programs. We want this collection of programs, these systems, to work for that single mom that Eric used in his scenario there. That's really what drives us there. But change in politics, especially at the federal level, is hard and takes a long time. So what do we do in the meantime? And I think we've been working recently with an organization in South Carolina called SC Thrive, who is provides direct services. They assist people in finding jobs, and so they use this tool to help them map out, okay, if you get this type of job and you qualify for these benefits, this, what's it going to look like for you, and what sort of pitfalls might you face as you move that, as folks consider going into maybe a nursing program or a training program that can help them leapfrog over some of those cliffs into a job that earns more money. What are you looking at? How are you going to deal with that? So we absolutely do that, and that's deeper data than you see there. It gets you into the workbook, the actual workbook that Eric has created. We sign an agreement with you and tailor it really to help meet the needs of the folks who are using it. But also, in addition, there are researchers who are using this. There's a professor, Craig Richardson, at Winston-Salem State University, who is doing some research on how these cliffs affect his community around the university there. And using this data, there's some folks at think tanks in Washington who are using this data to help inform public policy and write things that they write. So it's being used in a variety of ways, and we love to work with more nonprofits who can assist people, because we do think it can be a very valuable tool as you're assisting people. How can they navigate through this mess until we can build that national movement and get Washington to fix it and change it. So
yeah, the other uses for this really, they're varied, right? And we're still figuring out some of this based on the interest that we see. But if you're a nonprofit and you work with the population, you're trying to help them meet their needs in some way, being able to map out when they should expect cliffs if they're working gives you power. Knowledge is power is a catchphrase, but it's so true. There are opportunities that we see for allowing for better negotiation of raises, for instance, on the job, where a raise of a quarter an hour on a job might push someone over a cliff that makes them lose thousands and thousands of dollars in benefits in a year. But maybe if that raise was $1 or 75 cents or $1.50, maybe that allows them to leapfrog, the most immediate cliff that they're going to face, so that they can be stable and actually see a real income increase to their household for that period of time. It's not the model itself is not a panacea for solving things at the nonprofit or at the corporate level. However, we think it allows for the sort of intermediate fixes, but also if we can have this clearly understood by corporations, by nonprofits serving the population, then we think there's a groundswell demanding that the system be reformed so that these things don't exist and we're not having to navigate them. Stephanie Spencer asked a great question, like how do we put this in layman's terms? In terms of what the graph is showing you, and I think the easiest way to think about it, Stephanie, is what I just said, which is you can have someone like Joyelle who may be making, let's say she's making $12.75 an hour, and she gets a raise to $13 an hour, right? 25-cent raise an hour. But that could actually, in some circumstances, make her lose $5,000 to $10,000 in benefits, which is far exceeds anything she could make given that raise. And so that's the quintessential example of a cliff that is debilitating and sort of stops people in their tracks in terms of moving forward in their jobs. So hopefully that helps make more sense. And another question came in asking, who all are we talking to? Talking to everybody. So Eric has had the opportunity to testify before Congress a number of times. We've talked, these guys can go into it in great detail, but we've had conversations and presentations in front of virtually, every leader at our state house and within the governor's office. DFACs, absolutely. Yeah. Federal agencies. And in fact, Eric and Buzz were in DC yesterday presenting to some Congress folks who are interested in champion reform at the federal level. So guys, I don't know if you want to say any more about that, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think we've gotten in Georgia, we've gotten particular interest from the House Rural Development Caucus. And what that is, coming out of the last recession back in the early 2010s, we noticed that metro areas economy recovered better, and so than rural areas. And so this council was formed it travels the state every year, and looks for ways to spur economic development in the rural parts of our state. And so they started hearing just from business owners who were saying, we don't understand what's going on. People are working part-time, and then they walk off the job after so many hours a month. And or I offered somebody a raise and they turned it down. What in the world's going on? And of course, they were describing these welfare cliffs. And so they invited us in, and we presented to them 2 or 3 times now, and they're grappling with what can the state of Georgia do on its own to help that population and help those folks overcome the cliff. We've done similar things with policymakers, HHS, the HHS director in Oklahoma, a special committee that's been formed in Kentucky as they're grappling, trying to figure out how to help these folks in this wage range. So there's a lot of policy push. We're like Eric said, we'll talk to anybody. We'll talk to anybody and everybody. I got a question from Teresa. She's asking, what's a better solution to prevent the cliffs? And I think, ultimately what we'd like to see, and Eric Randolph, feel free to chime in as well. Ultimately, what we'd like to see is that as people earn more money, that their benefits gradually taper down so that we don't have this cliff, so that folks aren't forced into that situation where they have to decide, either to take a certain job or not take it, or to accept or reject a raise because of the amount of money they might lose in SNAP or housing or Medicaid or whatever it is. So ultimately, we'd love to see it taper down. And the details of how we do that, it's the interaction of, as dozens of different programs here. So it won't be easy, but I think, that's ultimately what we'd love to see. And so I think in the meantime, some of the states we've been talking to are considering, packages that maybe can be done on the state level to more or less do that, help offset the cliffs. Maybe a state level benefit that helps make those programs kind of taper down as opposed to be a cliff. I know the Atlanta Federal Reserve has done a lot of research on this as well, and they arrive sort of at the same place we do, but from a PhD economist level. But kind of the things they advocate for are, what if we created a group of benefits that assisted somebody who's in a training program that, at the end of the training program, they're in a job that helps leapfrog over some of these cliffs. So I think there's a lot of ideas out there, and we want to see that kind of creativity of, and even from folks like y'all who are on the ground. You're working with folks who are impacted by this every day, and we'd love to help craft creative programs and advocate for them that you folks might come up with. And because we don't know that there's one single solution, but I think if we're going to have ultimate reform of these programs, we try things that that are backed by evidence and research. We help people, and then we can replicate that in other places and take it to the national level and say, hey, this is, let's fix these programs. So,
Buzz,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Lee.
No, I was just going to say, this is so wonderful. And of course, not to be political, but just to talk about policy from policy standpoint, the whole trickle down theory, it will trickle down. Well, it trickles down to a certain point, but if you can't overcome some of these challenges, then it does not impact them. And so, Buzz, you're talking about, those who are bettering themselves may need a little more assistance in one way. Let's say they're going to school part-time, they're working 2 jobs, and maybe they need childcare because they're going to school. But if they have that childcare benefit, they'll be able to finish school and ultimately get over that cliff and become, be where they want to be.
Yeah.
So maybe, as you were indicating, coming up with some packaged solution paths to resolve issues, some of these challenges for each scenario. What is it that this person needs in this particular instance? Are they in training, and can we use WIOA funding for training?
Yep.
What, some current career counseling for where they're working now, or maybe changing a position now would help them better their current situation while they're training, but still qualify for all these benefits. Anyway, this is fascinating, but coming up through partners and other partnerships, just all across the spectrum, to come up with some, formulaic packaged pathway solutions that can be communicated with each other, so that everyone's not having to reinvent the wheel locally.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah, and we have some ideas about. Great question by Renee Bird Lewis. Renee, good to see you're on this call. But yes, we've been talking to the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and any chambers that will have us talk to them. We definitely have, and we're slowly coming up with ideas about these intermediate solutions and packages, right? And one of those, on the corporate side, this is, as Renee points to, this could be used to retain talent, right? And I appreciate the prompt. When someone experiences a cliff, a lot of times what they're going to lose first, and this is painful, right, is housing and childcare. Yeah. I mean, 2 things that a single mom can't give up, right? So she's trapped. But there are some things I know there are childcare tax credits, both at the federal and state level, that if a company is of the right size and can structure those, whether it's direct payment to a provider or doing it, on site, creating an option on site, those credits together can basically be a wash, for an employer in terms of the cost of providing that. That's one thing that we're looking at, exploring the opportunities for businesses on that front. And there are things like that, if similar to a nonprofit working with one of the recipients, a business who's aware of an employee's situation could actually map this out for them as well, and talk to them about a wage progression that will help them stay within the company, but yet not run into and not hit these cliffs along the way, so that they're getting the extra training that they need, and maybe even getting on an entirely different wage progression track that gets them out of this struggle entirely. But it may require additional training, new certifications, and using WIOA funds as a way of doing that, or working with nonprofits in the community that provide training for different paths. They come into play as well. We did have a question on here. I want to make sure that we show this and can answer this, because I want it to be as clear as we can make it through this. But Eric, one thing that's been requested is for you to pull the screen back up and kind of talk through where a major cliff happens, and talk about, if they hit this cliff, what's the raise that actually caused the cliff to happen? And then when they drop in income, what does that income drop look like, sort of in the worst spots?
So before I actually answer that, I just want to point out a couple of things. If we would actually change the structure of the family, if we come up here and add a third child, or maybe just keep it one child, it actually changes where these cliffs occur, because most of the programs are based on the idea of, what is the poverty level, and and that's based on household size. So every year the HHS comes out with its poverty guidelines, and so that changes depending on that. So what you see here is basically for a household of 3. It will be a single mom with 2 children. So that's kind of specific to that. But it will, if I make it a household with 3 children, for example, that it's going to change the answer. But in this particular case, this particular cliff is actually being driven by the food stamp program. And if you can actually kind of, you can do it graphically, but also you can actually look at the table. So you can download the table, and with this, you can, someone who's good with Excel, for example, could actually calculate exactly at what point would you actually see, your cliffs, and you can actually do that. So let's put the graph back up. So this one is actually roughly, let's see if I can do it. This is at an income of 28,000 is where you see this cliff for the food stamp program. And it actually, I can go right here, for example, and I see that it's 8,700, and then it drops down here to just get at the right place, to 1190. So they're actually losing roughly over $6,000 in the food stamp benefit right here. So that's one particular cliff. And then we have some other cliffs here that are driven by some of the other programs. And you have, for example, the CHIP program, where you go into different levels. The blue, well, actually this is being driven by the HICS, which is the ACA exchanges. We can actually, one of the things is for strategies is that sometimes you have to move them into positions. Like if you say that we don't need to have like the Medicaid assistance, like it actually makes the situation better. So you can like toggle off, for example, a couple of these programs, and it looks, you still have the cliff problem, but it looks better. And so if you have an employer that, for example, provides a very nice health benefit, you can actually make the cliff situation easier for the individuals.
Mhm.
So well, here's the child care cliff out here particularly. So that's what's causing this cliff.
Hey, Eric, if I can jump in, when
Sure.
you add all the programs back, that the highest point there,
Mhm.
with the gray, just so you know, each one of the points as Eric's going along, when you see a point jump up, that's a 25-cent increase or decrease in pay hourly. And that's basically the increments that we use. uh, any finer tune than that, and the calculations become, way more than we want to do because of the strain that it puts on the system. But you can see this in 25-cent increments. So what you're seeing there at that highest point is essentially a 25-cent raise that pushes somebody over that cliff. And as Eric pointed out, that effectively makes them lose $6,000 annually in income to the family, whether it's, through one of the programs or other benefits that they receive. Hopefully that hope. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I think that did help. A question regarding that: what has your feedback been from employers when you're speaking with them? Because of course, if they're giving a 25%, a 25-cent raise,
yeah,
in talking to them, how do they work to plan increases and have that mix with their budgeting and their current wage, needs? How has that feedback been, and what are they saying?
So in all honesty, and of course, if there are any business owners on the call, we would love to get to that level of conversation with you, but we haven't been able to get that far with employers. We've had some major nationally recognized companies that you would know. We've had good conversations with them. They're fascinated by this. They see the implications because many of them know that they have a pretty good chunk of their employee population that are receiving some level of benefits, right?
Right.
And they know that it's affecting retention and hours worked and the willingness to work hours and that sort of thing. And they, our thought is they can use it to drive retention and to think about the policies that you're go to that level of trying to deal with it. One of the things that we run up against, and this is just in all transparency because it probably is occurring to some of you, is that the businesses who are in this place where they do have employees receiving benefits, they do not get treated well in the media because they're charged with not paying enough and that sort of thing. And while they would love to be able to use a system like this, they don't feel like they can do it in-house because of the stigma that would come from that if it were revealed that they were using this to help their employees in-house. So one of the things we're talking about is there a way to do this external to the companies and help them map out ways to plan for their employees, so that it's not tied so directly to the company. But that's really what we run up against. And that next level conversation that you're hinting to, that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have a few other questions in here. Dana asked, what's the process for direct service agencies to get access to the tool for use with clients, and is there a cost?
Yeah, so there is, and again, I'm being as transparent with everyone as I can. We're trying to figure out the model that works to sustain the development of the website and maintain it, and is also affordable. So the bottom line answer is we don't have a set model yet, and we're open to those conversations and discussing what works for nonprofits that want to use this. As we try to figure that out, as you can imagine, to update the data, to support the development of the site and things, it costs money to keep that going. So we have to do something like that. Grant funding only gets you so far. Foundations have been happy to help support the underlying development of the site, but the maintenance side and updates, they are much less willing to help us with. Just the sort of philosophy that we're running up against with foundations. So we're looking at that. So if you're interested, we would love to have that conversation with you and figure out what works for you, because the bottom line is we want this everywhere in order for policy to change, and also for people to get help now. So if you go to the website as it stands, you can log in and you can do up to 10, I think, free demos of how it works. And then if you want to go beyond that, just let us know and we will work with you to make this work for you. Okay, that's the one thing I can commit to. And as you look at it, keep in mind, we have further developments happening with the system. In the next big upgrade, we're going to have the ability to add additional children. I think we're going up to 6 kids because that's more needed than we thought it would be initially. And we're also adding additional programs, and also the number of parents and structure of the household in terms of adults in the household will be much more flexible. So that's coming in the next release.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And this is fascinating. Cindy also had a question. I'm not sure if you were able to read it. It was just above Dana's. How does this approach work for students and young adults who are participating in inclusive learning programs? Those are non-degree seeking life skill training programs for young adults on the spectrum. These programs are not free. There's tuition and may have to take out loans. Many have to take out loans to participate. Any input on this particular demographic? And then she says
Oh, wow.
job training. Yeah.
That's a great question. I'm not sure I fully understand all of that. I mean, I think to the degree those programs are based on income to the household, and maybe they lose those are certainly going to create cliffs for that household. So I think that's important I'm not sure that's the direction this question is coming from, but to the degree that does impact the household based on income, that's important. We don't have that model though. Those programs are not included in this model. We're looking at the really big programs at this point, but the solution there is probably the right one.
I'm sure you'll be adding. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, as much as we can, we're trying to add programs that really affect a volume of people, right? If it gets too narrow, then it doesn't apply to enough people to justify the expense of data collection and development. So
and hitting the areas that are challenges for people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So one of the questions that we also had was, what changes would be beneficial in lessening the benefits cliff, and which of those implemented at state and federal levels? And you've talked around this, some, but could you go into a little bit more about some of the policy discussions that you're having on the state and federal levels?
Buzz, you want to on that, or Eric?
I could give a couple of examples of that. And I think a lot of from a policy level, you almost have to go program by program, and you have to examine each program and the considerations of that program. So for the food stamp program, which is SNAP, right, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, for that particular program, the cliff now is much worse than it ever has been, because Congress panicked because of COVID-19. So back in, I believe it was March of 2020, they passed the Families First Coronavirus Act and Coronavirus Response Act, whatever they called it at the time. And it was overwhelmingly supported by both parties. And you had a Republican-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled House, and you had a Republican president, and they signed this into law. But one of the things in that, not saying that I'm not criticizing the whole act and the law, but what they did with the food stamp program is that they created this massive cliff, because they said, hey, everybody in the program gets the maximum amount of benefit no matter where your income. And when you looked at the chart, the reason you have that massive thing is because all states are still, not all states, 32 states, including Georgia, is still allowing for the maximum benefit to be given. But what you want is, as Buzz had mentioned before, you need to taper it back down. So in that particular case, the suggestion for Congress would be, you gotta take that rule that you passed in 2020 and don't allow it anymore, right? But they haven't done that. Or at the state level, the states are actually applying for this on a monthly basis, and then the U.S. Department of Agriculture that approves the food stamp program is approving it and I think they have to approve it as long as the emergency is in place. So that's like an example, for example, which is that's in statute, and it's also the process. So you can see, you get into some of the nitty gritty of the programs to actually solve the problem.
Right.
And that's just one good example.
Right. And thank you. And then you have to be careful about stopping one program and creating another cliff or impacting another area. So you really have to look at everything as a whole, for, as you said, Eric, kind of for the most individuals and the cliffs that they're experiencing. Because if you stop one very important program or lessen it greatly, you've created another cliff and some more impact on other programs. So it really is complex.
Yeah, I think also, some of the discussions we've had with people at the state and federal level, if you prioritize things, so like if you said SNAP and Medicaid are two of the largest programs, there's many people in those programs. If you could fix the cliffs in those two things, then you're making things better for a lot of people. And so I think there's ways we can go about this in a strategic fashion, not just saying, well, the entire system has to be fixed immediately. No, you can help millions of people if you just took care, fix the problems in SNAP and Medicaid, because so many people are in those programs. So I think there's ways to go about this that we can have tremendous impact on. It doesn't fix everything, and some of those folks, if they're on more than those two programs, then they would face problems in other programs. But you've dramatically improved, lessened the impact of the cliffs, even for those people who are in more than those two programs, if you fix those two. So I think under the previous presidential administration, we had a lot of conversations with people in the I'm sorry, I'm getting my government acronyms mixed up. Some of the sub-departments under Health and Human Services where these programs reside. And that was kind of be their approach was, all right, let's look at those two. Let's help the people we can around those, and and we'll have dramatic impact there. So
agreed. And I know we're running short on time, which I hate, because this topic is so wonderful, and we've had excellent participation from the audience. Wonderful questions there. The recording will be up, and Joy, I'm sure Joy could send that to the participants. But I wanted to also just mention that, one of the things was, how can Max members use this tool to assist their clients? And you mentioned that they can log in about 10 times and check out some different models, and then maybe they can use that research to assist them. But also to spread the word about this, so that, as was mentioned earlier, chamber, but policymakers at every level, from county to region to state, and anyone who has folks on the federal level that throughout the Max membership that may not be aware of this. This is really important. And I think that would be an excellent way to help you, but also to help these people. Is there anything, Eric, and Buzz, that you all would like to say or encourage people to do with this tool, or what are your closing words about this?
Yeah, just a few things. One, if you go to our website, the benefits cliffs.org, there are also reports and recommendations on specifically what Georgia could do to fix cliffs, both at the state, and with federal cooperation. Eric's done a terrific job of writing those things up, so check that out. The other thing is, look, if you're a nonprofit working with this population, we want to talk to you about getting you into the system so that you can sit with a client, plug in their information, their demographic information, and see and map out how the cliffs will affect them, because we think that that's the most immediate way to provide assistance to people. So get with us, any one of us, and we'll help you get there with that, if that's useful to you. The other thing is, look, now that this is an influential group. I mean, that's why it was so cool to get this invitation to speak. Now that the cliffs are a problem, you have politicians and policymakers at various levels that listen to you and value what you have to say. If we don't demand change in the system, it's not going to change. And so we need you. We need you to do that too. And if there are opportunities to speak to any other groups, we'll go anywhere and speak to anyone about this. So please ask us. And that's it, really. Guys, anything else from you?
I guess I would just add, in addition to that, if you know folks that you'd like us to talk to, we'll present this anytime, any place. So, because we love to talk to people, and we'd love to bring this to more folks. And I think, yeah, because you never know when somebody out there that we talk to is going to have a great idea that can help a lot of people's lives. So we're happy to talk to anyone. I've had some conversations with some folks in City Hall in Atlanta. I hope those continue. We'd love to continue doing that, because I think even, we don't need to here on the local level wait for a federal solution to come. I think there's things that we can do right now on the ground in our state, county, and local and city governments to assist people right now. And I think we need to do that while working for change at the federal level as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so very much. We really appreciate your participating. We appreciate everyone who's attended today. We could go on for another hour. I've got like 10 more questions, but that's another can of worms. So we just appreciate all the wonderful work that you're doing and look forward to engaging you more in the future. Just to remind everyone, the next Max Lunch and Learn will be with McKinney's on the skilled trades in person on June 22nd. Max Minutes is June 24th with the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice, and Max Academy on trauma-informed customer care will be in person on June 28th. And again, we thank our anchor investors. If anyone would like to join Max, please get in touch with the wonderful Joy Wilkins, and she will get you hooked up. We're so grateful for your participation and everyone's support, and we look forward to even more partnership with everyone involved. Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.